Morant with a running start. Elevate! Dunks! Oh my goodness! Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! John Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies lost a crucial game in their race for the playoffs and to avoid the play-in against the Timberwolves on Thursday night. And to discuss it, to talk about all things Grizzlies, I'm joined by Chris Herrington. Chris, what'd you think about that game?
You know, it was a really great first half of basketball. I know like the Grizzlies defense wasn't great and their shooting was unsustainable unless the defense improved. I'm talking about from a spectator standpoint of watching teams play basketball in the arena. It was an exciting first half of basketball. It was a close game. Teams were playing well, at least offensively. The two stars were showing out, and it was great. And then the third quarter happened, and it changed. It changed in a hurry.
Is it bad to let your opponent score the first 17 points of a? Was it 17? It was a 26-2 was the final run,
and that may be a different part of the quarter. It started. There was a lot of scoring that happened in the third quarter. By the time it opened with a 17-3 run.
That's right.
What I noted
we hit a 3-pointer. The Grizzlies hit a 3-pointer to start. It was, in fact, from the 11:22 mark. So 38 seconds into the third quarter, that kicked off a 26-2 run was the final.
Okay. When I was watching it live, I think maybe there was a timeout at the point that I marked to 17-3.
Yeah.
But it was a 17-3 start to the quarter that included fourth fouls and early exits for both John Morant and Zach Edey. Whether that changed the outcome or not, I think that's subject to interpretation, but it was a thing that happened.
Going to the first half before we talk about the foul issue. The first half, absolutely, I agree with you. I mean, both teams were flamethrowing, and if you didn't have any skin in the game, you were like, this game's amazing. And even as a Grizzlies fan living and dying on each play, I'm like, you know what? We're up by 5. We're shooting 65%. Like Desmond Bane's on fire and John Morant's on fire. And so it was obviously a lot of fun, but you're like, hey, we're making everything and we're only up a few. Of course, it unraveled. As far as the foul issue, like, I don't know how much we can rightfully complain about either the foul trouble to Jaren and Zach Edey, and also maybe a few questionable calls that did not go the Grizzlies' way. Here's one that bothered me the most. All right, I think most people are going to point to random, like, oh, Jaren got a tech for bouncing the ball high. That's black and white. That doesn't bug me. Jaren wasn't actually out of bounds. Yeah, that's not great.
Right.
John Goble, not one of my favorite referees. Here's the tiny one that bugs.
I want to note,
yeah,
John Goble's presence was noted by multiple people before the game even started.
Yeah.
In pregame conversations along the sideline, it was like, oh no, John Goble's the referee.
Yeah, I'm probably more into NBA refs than your average NBA fan.
I am not very into them, but just for some context for people, that's the referee that Taylor Jenkins chastised after the playoff game in Minnesota a few years ago and called out.
Yeah, I actually posted on social media one of his moments from that playoff game where he just kept making incorrect calls against Desmond Bane. The Grizzlies challenged one, had it overturned, and then on the next possession, he made another incorrect call against Desmond Bane. Anyways, I don't know how much that bothers. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, the one call that bothered me the most is Vince Williams Jr. got called for traveling early in the game. Like Goble called Vince Williams Jr. for traveling. And to be clear, it was a travel. Like Vince Williams Jr. moved both of his feet before starting his dribble. In the third quarter, Julius Randle did the same thing. He did a step back, caught the ball, took 2 steps back like he was going to shoot, didn't shoot, and then decided to start his dribble going towards the basket for a layup. Goble's the guy standing right there, does not call the same travel. That's the tiny one that bugged me. But regardless, Chris.
So, well,
Oh,
there's a play I want to.
what's your play? Yeah.
I have no idea whether this came across on the. Because I was at the game.
Yeah.
I have no idea whether this came across on the broadcast. I happen to be sitting right in front of it. I did the game story, so I was sitting courtside last
Yeah.
night. There was a play in the first half. Not even a play. There was a moment in the first half. It's a transition, and Anthony Edwards is guarding Ja at midcourt, and Ja turns on the jets and starts to blow by him. And Edwards reaches out and literally grabs Morant's arm to keep him from getting by. It happened right in front of the referee, and I could see Ja, this exhalation of, oh, I'm not even getting this one tonight. You could see it in his face in that moment, and he was on edge about the officiating the rest of the night.
Yeah, I did not notice this play you're talking about, so maybe it didn't even. Maybe it wasn't that clear on the TV camera on the sideline.
Well, it should have been clear to the official because he literally grabbed his arm to stop him from going by, like grabbed it and held it.
Yeah. But even so, even with our outrage as Grizzlies fans over what we felt was inequitable refereeing for most of the game, that doesn't erase the Timberwolves dropping 119 points through three quarters. That doesn't excuse the Timberwolves having a franchise record for them, most points ever in a quarter, 52 points. Franchise record for the Grizzlies, most points allowed in a quarter. That 119 points through three quarters, a Grizzlies franchise record for the most points allowed through three quarters. So none of that's refereeing. Like maybe it could have been a little bit closer. So I'm not really, I guess we can close the book on that's our referee complaints. The rest of it, I think we have to look at the actual Grizzlies and how they played. And despite like Ja having an amazing first half, despite the 19 points in the second quarter from Desmond Bane, when it all fell apart, I mean, maybe it fell apart earlier. You could have been up by more if you had played some defense in the first half. But then in the third quarter, when it finally was really blown open, like, what do you think was the biggest issue? Is it just we can't stop anybody, or can we narrow it down closer or more of a point?
I mean, they also gave up 37 in the first quarter. And I'm thinking about defense broadly, not just defense in the third quarter. But the problem was defense broadly. And I mean, there's a lot of things there. But that felt like a very playoff style game where Minnesota was making a point to hunt the bad defenders with their the Grizzlies bad defenders with their good scorers.
Yeah.
And you could see that in the very beginning of the game where there was like three, not consecutive, but close to consecutive possessions, I think, where they did a Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle pick and roll to get the switch with Randle on Edey and hit three straight jumpers over Edey. And then later in the game, it was Santi Aldama who was getting picked on. And Anthony Edwards was hunting him out and scoring on him. And Julius Randle was hunting him out and scoring on him. They were basically tag teaming. And so that was a situation where they were hunting the bad defenders and they were going right at them. And defense is team basketball. It's not individual. And so there are other things you can do to try to alleviate some of that in terms of communication, in terms of scheme or whatever. Yes. But I think it starts with, like Grizzlies had some bad defenders and who got sucked into bad matchups, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, when we were super excited with how Zach Edey had played in the past couple of games, I think most of us were at least reasonably skeptical, or not skeptical. We're like, okay, he did it against the Pistons when they're missing Jalen Duren, and he did it against the Hornets, who had Mark Williams, but they're horrible. What's it going to look like now in these essential games that are virtually playoff games, these games against the Timberwolves, and that's going to be the Nuggets tonight and then the Mavericks on Sunday. And I think the first test, not great, because you saw that they were just hunting him. They were doing pick and rolls nonstop. And even like, Julius Randle, all right, he's not going to have that kind of game, even if regardless of who's playing drop against him.
That is something I said. I was sitting next to a Grizzlies employee and I leaned over midway through the first quarter and I said, if you're going to die by Julius Randle's jumpers, you might just die.
Yeah. Julius kept making them. He had 31 points. He kept doing it the whole game. But like the Ant Edwards, he also got some of those just like step into open 3-pointers, like in the first half, in the second quarter, where it's like, all right, they're hunting Edey. Beyond that, it is, okay, Aldama's, he can't stop anybody either. And I think, I don't know, it's just one game, but it's one massive game. And it also, you could say it's more than one game, because I was going to say, this is another game against a good team where you can't come through. This is now 8 straight home losses against teams with winning records. So what were you going to say?
It highlights the lack of defensive infrastructure at the moment around your star players. This is a game where you're at home and Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and John Morant combined to shoot 15 of 30 from 3 in FedEx Forum.
Yeah.
And you lose a game to a good team, but it wasn't the Thunder. It's a regular good team. And it highlights just the lack of defensive infrastructure, and that's a mix of bad decisions and bad luck, right? I mean, does that game go differently if Brandon Clark and Jalen Wells are healthy and in the game? It might. Does it go differently if Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart are healthy in the game? It might. That is 4 good defenders. If you started from the beginning of the season and you rate the Grizzlies roster 1 through 15 in terms of defensive ability, those are 4 guys on the upper half of the list. And none of them were on the floor in that game for various reasons. And you throw in like Vince Williams Jr. health stuff, and I thought he was okay. I would have played him a little bit more, honestly, but like he's not what he was last season. And so that's just, again, some bad decisions plus some bad luck, and it's compounded to create a roster around these 3 stars that is just not good enough defensively. And it's a frustration to be going into postseason basketball, and they will go into postseason basketball, whether they go into playoffs or not, I don't know, but they'll go into the postseason with all 3 of the main guys healthy and generally playing well. And Jaren's been a little shaky recently, but generally had a good season, generally playing well, and just not have a team around them that's good enough right now.
Yeah, I think the not have a team around them that's good enough. That's the whole story of the year. Like you correctly pointed out, you had unbelievable offensive games from Desmond Bane and Ja Morant, and Jaren, I mean, 23 points, and you'd even say not his best effort, but still he was 4 for 7 on 3-pointers. Yeah. The team overall, just incredible shooting numbers, the 18 for 36 as a team from 3, and you got stomped, like all of that stuff happened and you got stomped. And the numbers, the 8 consecutive home losses against good teams, Ja's playing excellently, but I'm not going to blame him for the team results, but his excellent play, his scoring 30 points, it has no correlation with the team doing well right now. And I think it goes more to the roster. In Ja's last 11 home games that he's played in, which just so happened to be the 11 home games since the trade deadline, they're 3-8. The 3 wins, 2 of them are over the Suns by a combined 5 points. They beat the Jazz in a game that was actually kind of needlessly close. Now you could say the teams they lost to are all quite good. It's 2 Thunder losses, the Knicks, the Cavs, the Celtics, the Lakers, the Warriors, the Timberwolves. But you're supposed to be in the same class as the Timberwolves, Lakers, Warriors, even Knicks. The Knicks are a little bit fraudulent. Their fans think they're sort of look at the way the Grizzlies look at their team. Hey, we don't beat anybody good. Ja's averaging 30 points in those games, but Ja, I think, has to score. I think it's more, you go down the roster and you're like, all right, we now lost Jalen Wells. Who's going to play? Also, by the way, Luke Kennard not playing, finally got the DMP after doing a lot of cardio the last few games.
I'm going to guess. I mean, that was if he had come out and suddenly got hot from 3, it would have made a difference. But otherwise, that was not a good matchup game for Luke Kennard, given the athleticism that Minnesota put out there, especially when he was playing. They didn't even play. They played Lamar Stevens and John Conchar instead. They didn't play those guys much either. I think they came out for 10 minutes. I would be surprised if Kennard doesn't play tonight. We're talking Friday morning tonight in Denver. He'll be fresh. Yeah, unlike everyone else.
That's true.
I think you got to put him out there and see if he can snap out of it in that game.
Well, you'd also have to wonder if Vince Williams Jr. will play his first back-to-back of the season on Friday night.
Yeah,
and
I think he probably will. He only went 18 minutes. He had said a month ago that he was about at 80%, and that's what it looked.
Yeah,
and he said yesterday at shoot around that he was in a better place than he was a month ago, and that's kind of the way it looks. He still doesn't look like his old self, but he was. I noticed last night he was going up to get rebounds, and he was pushing off the ankle on drives in a way that hasn't been as common. And so I took some very mild encouragement from that.
Yeah, I was texting with a Grizzlies friend, and I said, some of my also mild encouragement. I was like, well, Vince Williams seemed fine when he played. With Luke Kennard not playing, and maybe he'll be super fresh for tonight. So we have Luke Kennard, DMP, Gigi Jackson, healthy, not playing in the rotation. Is it fair to go as strong as I've been going with, is that not a colossal failure of the front office to build a team around these players when they spent so much effort seemingly just keeping Luke Kennard, and then in your biggest game in the offseason, then in your biggest game of the year, you have Luke not even playing, and Lamar Stevens and John Conchar getting minutes. Meanwhile, Gigi's not ready to contribute.
Yeah, I mean, partly this is on Kennard. I mean, Kennard has played 26 playoff games in his career. His career 46% three-point shooter in playoff games, right?
Yeah.
There's no reason Kennard shouldn't have been making shots still. Could the front office have done something different last summer that would have been better? Yes. Could they have pushed it a little bit more and done the Dorian Finney-Smith deal? Yes. Does that mean, should they have expected Luke Kennard to be this the last 5 games? No. I mean, that's partly on Kennard.
I mean, the thing I kept pointing to last offseason was like, if you look at the players you have under contract and you say we have one more slot to fill for like $10 million or whatever, there's no way you'd pick an undersized shooting guard as like the one thing you had, because you had those things in space. I mean, this is back when we had Marcus Smart still. It's like you wouldn't have picked that as the one move, like if you needed all these different things. And now that he's not out of the rotation, I don't know, I feel more upset. But Chris, let's take a break and let's come back and we'll talk about what this loss meant to the chase to avoid the play-in, and then let's try to figure out what the Grizzlies are going to do over the final 2 games and or in the postseason. All right, Chris, so I don't have all the permutations in front of me, but of course this loss to the Timberwolves is a big blow for the Grizzlies avoiding the play-in. They essentially controlled their own destiny. If they won out, they would have been 5th at worst. So losing this game, I'm pretty sure it means if the Timberwolves win their final 2 games, which are against the Nets and Jazz,
right,
they're top 6. So
no, I was talking to Wolves people last night. They had sorted all that out. They're guaranteed top 6
if they win their final 2.
If they win their last 2, yes.
So that basically means the Grizzlies need to beat the Nuggets tonight, of course. I don't think there's no scenario where you get in, where you avoid the play-in.
I think that's right.
The Clippers, we can cross our fingers. The Clippers at the very least have a relatively hard final 2 games, road games against the Kings and Warriors. So like you could cross your fingers and say, all right, hopefully they'll lose both of those games and they'd be stuck with on 48 wins. All this to be said, you're more than likely now playing a game on Tuesday in the play-in.
Yes, and there's a very good chance you're playing on the road in the play-in.
And that is also, if you end up dropping one of these games,
it feels like the most likely, and there's nothing above 50% in terms of specific outcomes at this point. Like it's wild still. But the most likely scenario is the Grizzlies as the 8 at Golden State, I think. I think that seems like the most likely scenario in a play-in.
Okay.
And so we'll see. I mean, you beat Denver, like, the odds of things change in a hurry. That's just a hard second of a back-to-back in Denver when they're rested in this situation. That's a rough spot. Yeah,
it is an unbelievably tough back-to-back. A lot of people have monitored this. The Grizzlies got in at 3:00 in Denver, and you gotta.
I had a Grizzlies employee, complaining about that to me at mid-season.
Yeah,
like 3 months ago they were complaining about that.
Yeah, I remember posting
that game is going to be important, and this is what is set up for us. Like that's been something they've been mad about for a long time.
Yeah, and obviously it's going to be less than 24 hours. The tip-off will be less than 24 hours after the tip-off of the Timberwolves game because it was a late quote unquote West Coast game. So if the Grizzlies end up in the play-in, I mean, is there even an opponent you're hoping for? Because I got to be real, I'm not excited about any of these matchups.
No, you can't. I mean, the Grizzlies are going to be justifiably a pretty big underdog in any playoff series if they get to the playoffs, no matter who the opponent is. That is just real. I have an extra layer because I'll probably be going to these games, so I've been thinking about that a little bit too. Yeah. If you stipulated to me, and I said this before last night's game, before they lost that game, I told someone this before the game. If you had stipulated to me, and if you still stipulate to me, even more so now, the Grizzlies win the 7-8 play-in game, I would say, give me the 7-8 play-in game and play Houston. I'd rather be the 7 and going against Houston than like the 6 going to play the Clippers or the 5 going to play the Clippers or whatever. Both for matchup reasons and for partly for travel reasons and for everything else. Like at this stage, like getting the first round series against the Rockets team that has been, I know has been hot lately and has finished a strong second, but like the Grizzlies finished a strong second a few years ago and lost in the playoffs. Like I'd take that. I mean, obviously, you're probably going to lose to them. You lose to Dylan Brooks and Steven Adams, and that brings its own kind of pain. But like, I think there's more likely to be competitive in that series than against the Thunder or against the Clippers, which is the 2 I would fear the most.
I'm wondering, obviously it was big news that the Grizzlies made the coaching change. And usually once, let's say, generally speaking, once you make a coaching change, and then if things go poorly, then the pressure ends up going on the GM. And we just saw the Nuggets dismiss their GM and coach at the same time. But I have to wonder if worst case scenarios play out and you lose in the play-in both games, don't make the playoffs, or you just did what you described. You face the Rockets and you lose to Dylan Brooks.
Right.
That's pretty ugly. Is there any kind of blowback or pressure that's going to come back on Zach Kleiman, or do we even know if Robert Parra is paying attention?
Well, that is part of the issue. The Robert Parra is a mystery box. So I mean, I don't know what Robert Parra thinks or what he'll do. I have no, at this point.
Yeah.
My operating assumption is Zach Kleiman will have the entire summer to hire a coach and to fiddle with the roster and you go into next season. But I 100% think the coaching changes now happen. That's the first lever, and the lever's been pulled. And I think people see the roster issues, and you can see some of the things that got you to that point. And I think it's a really big summer for the Grizzlies. And so I would be surprised if anything happened on the front office side before you get to next season.
Yeah.
But I think in some ways, like Taylor Jenkins was sort of in the spotlight going into this season. And I think that'll be Zach Kleiman going into next season.
What did you think, or what have you thought of what Tomas Isola has done in these games? I mean, it's hard to draw any conclusions really, but I
mean, you become the interim coach with 9 games left for a team that's struggling. And it's like, here, tomorrow you play the Lakers and you face this schedule, and it's kind of a tough spot. I think his obviously last night was last night, but he's generally gotten Zach Edey more on track to be the Zach Edey they want him to be. He's gotten Ja sort of more on track. I think the defensive problems are still the defensive problems. They looked a lot better defensively on their road trip where they went 3-0. I mean, those were against lesser teams, but there is that. I think there's stuff around the margins. Like I like that how he's handled the foul stuff better, I think, than Taylor Jenkins did. I don't think Jaren gets to 37 minutes in that game if Taylor Jenkins is coaching. I think there's been a lot of that. I think he's handled that stuff much better. I think his demeanor, I think people are struck by his demeanor. Sometimes you believe what a guy's put down, and sometimes you don't. Like sometimes you're in these situations in these press conferences, and you can look at the guy next to you and like, this is the guy who he's talking about. That is not the feel for Isolo. His sense of composure, his sense of thoughtfulness, he seems like he's come across very well. I think the real test for him is going to be the pressure of the games is building. It's going to continue to build for these next few, depending on where things go. And how do the star players really feel about him coming out of that? And I think the organization has to gauge that. That's probably the number one thing they have to gauge. I think they feel good about him as a basketball mind. I think, he is not just some hotshot assistant. He's been a successful head coach.
Yeah.
Which is a different kind of thing. I think if this was like a start from scratch situation, he may already have the job, but that's not what it is. And so I think they really have to gauge, are your best players going to be bought into him? And that's something they have to determine.
Yeah. Thinking about how it's hard to just judge performances of the team and assign that to either him or the players. Like when you think about just like, all right, we gave up 141 points in this must-win game. Like as a, as a layman, as a layperson podcaster watching, I'm like, what levers do we have to pull that, like, you know, like if Edie's getting killed in these things or Aldama's getting killed in these actions, it's like, there's no one else to play. And it's like, they tried to go small briefly, but like,
if they had played, let's say, Lamar Stevens, the Santi Aldama minutes in the second half, does that change the game outcome? I mean, maybe, but Lamar Stevens wasn't even on NBA roster a month ago.
Exactly. And also, I mean, going to Lamar Stevens and also complimenting his handling of foul trouble. Like in that third quarter, Edie gets his fourth foul, immediately comes out. Jaren gets his fourth foul right after comes out.
Yeah, but he brought him back in real fast.
That's what I was going to say. I give him credit where they're like, he's like, all right, Lamar, go in there. And then it was like 40 seconds and he's like, nope. Right. Like, Edie, go back in. And again, like you pointed out, Jaren played 37 minutes despite getting his fourth foul early in the third quarter. He immediately said, nope, you guys are going back in. Oh, guess what? Jaren didn't foul out, neither did Zach Edey. So
that's right. No, and not only has he done this, he's articulated it. I mean, he basically, I felt like I was being pandered to the other day when I asked the question.
Yeah, you did great. I was happy I saw that.
But and then he said, I think this was in the road, the follow-up question. I wasn't there, but he's basically, he said the exact thing I've been saying for years, which is you can hold a guy out to try to save him for the end of the game, and then you end up holding him out so long the end of the game doesn't matter. And I think just that recognition of some of that stuff, to me, I look favorably on that. I think, I don't think he is just performing the role of the head coach. I think he's doing it. And so I like that. But I don't know. It's hard to judge a guy on the fly. I mean, you get handed the situation you get handed.
Yeah. Do you think for tonight, I
will say, let me go back to something, because this is a good analogy.
Yeah.
David Fizdale got fired in season. Jamie Bickerstaff, who had been the lead assistant, took over as interim head coach. He got handed a bad situation, and the team lost. Right. And so the outcome was the outcome. But there was a sense that I had and that other people had of like believing in Bickerstaff, taking him seriously in a way that frankly people didn't. Fizdale, It was like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Like, I know the team is not having success, but this guy seems like he's actually good. And subsequent, what he did in Cleveland, now what he's doing in Detroit has sort of borne that out. And that is the vibe. Whatever the outcomes are, that has been the vibe off Isolo. That, this guy's legit. That is the sense people have.
That sounds good. I was just thinking that totally unrelated. I was like, maybe you could, I was thinking about when I said like, what levers can you pull? I was like, maybe Jay Huff gets dusted off, a little revenge game against the Nuggets. Try some pace and space.
You're going to go the other way. I mean, just bake in the bad defense.
Just have Huff and Kennard and just have them I don't know. No, there's not a lot to look forward to, but the Grizzlies play, of course, tonight, huge game against the Nuggets as they have it. They still have a chance maybe to avoid the play in, but I think now we're in the situation where you need help regardless to avoid the play in. So it's a tough, but like you said, the silver lining, if you end up in that 7-8 and win, silver lining is it's not a horrible place to be, is playing the Rockets when you consider your other options. You avoid the Thunder side of the bracket, and then you don't have to play. I mean, one thing I'm most interested in, when I was looking yesterday, when it was before yesterday's games, the Timberwolves and Warriors were 7-8. And I was like, whoever wins that play-in game, if that was what it was going to be, I'm pretty sure they would be betting favorites over the Rockets.
I think that's right. That would not be the case for the Grizzlies, but I think that would have been right.
Yeah. I mean, like literally, if you rank the top 8 right now, you're not going to find anyone who doesn't have the Grizzlies 8th when it comes to the other playoff teams, as far as how everyone's playing. I mean, the Warriors are tough. The Clippers have been really good. So
let me throw a little trivia question out for you. Not even trivia, because it's not public info, or it could be, but there's this thing I was planning to write this week, and then the Jalen Wells thing like scuttled it completely because it no longer mattered for the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
But I started looking at this a month ago, and I was going to do one final look at it and then write about it. If you take the 8 playoff teams in the West, projected playoff teams in the West, and you run only a projected 9-man playoff rotation, the 9 players most likely to play in playoff basketball, and run their cleaning the glass net ratings, only lineups that only include players from their projected playoff rotations. What's the top of the West look like?
Oh, well, I think I've heard you say some of this though, because I listened to your Daily Memphian Grizzlies podcast.
The Brandon Clark and the Jalen Wells injuries rendered the Grizzlies sample.
Yeah, it makes it useless.
So it doesn't
we have no stats. I mean, the Thunder still got to be first.
The Thunder is second. The Thunder drops
really?
to second when you do this.
Wow, that's amazing. I would assume
the Thunder number is still outrageous, but there's a team
that
peaks right over the top of them when you only look at their projected playoff rotation.
I would assume the Warriors are really good.
Warriors are good. I think they're third on this.
Third is so what about the Nuggets?
No, not even close.
No,
the Nuggets defense is bad.
Yeah.
Even when you, it doesn't even get better when you remove the extraneous.
Well, now I just got to
it's the Clippers.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
The Clippers net rating only using the projected 9-man playoff rotation is plus 15.
I have a buddy who can't stand Kawhi Leonard because he never plays basketball, and I'm always just like texting him stuff like, "Hey, Kawhi Leonard won Western Conference Player of the Month." Kawhi Leonard, like, because I adore Kawhi Leonard. I am more of the like. Kawhi Leonard is one of the most cursed players as far as his health. The guy is an absolute basketball machine. And yeah, I'm terrified of the Clippers. And like, I actually I'm rooting for them outside of any matchups with the Grizzlies this year. That's wild. So like, it's really funny where I do feel like,
but the reason I brought that up, the Rockets, as good as the Rockets are, when you run that projection, they drop kind of a lot. You know,
that doesn't surprise me. But also, like, how you can't even get data basically for the Lakers, can you? Because Luka hasn't been there long enough.
The number gets smaller. I mean, it doesn't have to. Luka doesn't have to be on the floor. It could be a lineup of you know, LeBron, Gabe Vincent, Rui Hachimura. You know, it just has to be 5 guys who are going to be in their playoff rotation. Yeah.
Well, we can end there, Chris. There's not even much analysis left to do. We just got to watch and see what happens and then gird ourselves for the postseason. It'll be hopefully fun.
The Warriors lost at home to the Spurs. Anything can happen in an NBA basketball game.
There you go. We've had a lot of funny. Didn't the Spurs lose like a win and get in situation years ago when they were playing a tanking team in the last game of the year? Who knows? Anything can happen in an NBA basketball game. Fingers crossed the Grizzlies get the results they need. Anyways, if you want more from Chris, you can read him or listen to him over at the Daily Memphian. If you want more from me, get that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great weekend. Go Grizz.